Welcome to a quick update on this Class D Amplifier project. A few little bits and pieces have arrived and I thought I'd show them to you and have a quick chat about them. Not a long video this, so you won't need a cup of tea or a gallon of beer. Anyway, let's have a look at what we've got. Now the first thing I'd like to comment on is the LED here, which is the power on LED. Now I mentioned on the last video that I was going to connect it to AC, and one or two people thought that this was, well, one of the worst things I could do on the planet. So rather than upset everybody, I thought I would do it slightly differently. Here is the LED which I've mounted, and I've glued in here with araldite, and in here also is a resistor, the limiting resistor, and I'm feeding it from here. Now this is the input selection board, also mounted on the front panel, and here is a 5-volt regulator, and I've simply connected the 5 volts from there. Eventually 12 volts will go into here, 12 volts AC, and be rectified by this bridge rectifier, and then stabilized at 5 volts for the operation of this and in fact for the LED. Now I have mentioned before that I could say put a 2K resistor in there, and if you can calculate it out that will be fine, but in reality doing the maths is kind of pointless, because what you do want in fact is to have all the LEDs, this one, the power one, and the 3 here, at the same brilliance. And clearly you can't do that by calculation. These are the numbers that I came up with. With 5 volts and a 5.1K resistor, the LED draws 6 milliamps, which is not a lot, but that's what gives this particular diode the right brightness. Now this is the other thing that's arrived, and there's nothing very magical about it, except you buy this little package and it just happens to fit the holes on the metalwork and also the knob for the volume control. And that's exactly what it is. It's simply a volume control pot mounted on a small PCB. Now, in the past, I've just mounted the pot straight into the front panel and soldered the wires onto the bottom, and I don't know, one can do a very good job with that, but it never looks very good, I don't think. So for the sake of another $2, the input goes in here, left, right and center is earth, and the same here, output. Now for those of you that know me by now, you know I'm a bit of a fan of Alps pots. They tend to have good matching and not cheap, but then is it better to have a cheap pot that doesn't match or one that costs a bit more that does? Now this particular Alps pot is a 50K log, which is what you want for majority of transistorized equipment. The impedance is high enough that it won't upset things, but not too low that it will start losing level. And this particular PCB, you can see it's got 3 more holes here. This is for the larger of the 2 Alps pots, which you have to have a small mortgage to purchase. But this is the cheaper one, and time will tell if it's any good, but it's obviously a cut down version of the expensive one, which I've used in the past. But I've tested it already, and it's within about a dB on spot checking it all the way through. But we'll have a listen to it later on and see if it has a good log law, if that makes sense, and if there's anything nasty about it. Let's put it on the front panel. Now this should be interesting, doing this around the camera, but equally what we're doing isn't rocket science. So there's your front panel, and you'll see on the pot there is a lug on there which should, with a bit of luck, fit nicely in there. Look at that. perfect job. Washer and nut, all of which are supplied with the volume pot. And of course we're looking for the spanner, which I can't find anywhere. I'm just going to level this up slightly because there is a little bit of play in the socket here, but that looks pretty good to me. Now, as I can't find the correct spanner, we're going to have to use Mr. Adjustable. Not something I endorse, but let's see if we can make a reasonable job of this. Still level. That's it. I'm not going to tighten it any more than that at the moment because I should use the correct spanner for that. The worst thing on the planet is to end up scratching the aluminium, or aluminum if you prefer. So now, where's the knob? Here it is. I've got to find the small grub screw that goes into here, but that should, with a bit of luck, if I've done my ordering correctly, that hole should be just right for that. Ah, look at that. Slightly too deep, so we'd have to come forward a fraction. Look at that. Could have been designed for the job. Let's go and find the grub screw now. I'll go off camera because it could take me a while to find that. Right, we found the little grub screw. Just about see it there on the end of a small Allen key. So providing the threads are correct. Oh yeah, look at that. This is going a bit good. Right, we'll mount this on here now. Let's just bring it forward so you can see a bit better. And that will be about there. I know we're going to have to do this up a bit more first, so we can just see it nearly poking through. But it's quite a deep thread. Just go and make a cup of tea while you... I can just about see it now, so we'll pop it on. Let's see if that's going to be about the right place. Right, before I tighten it up, I'll just turn it round. Yeah, it wants to go a little bit more this way, if that makes sense. Because you really want it so that when the volume's at 12 o'clock, the nut or the little set screw is pointing directly down. I mean, some people don't bother about that, but I like it to be like that. I think we're fairly safe in saying about there. So, bearing in mind this is going to come off again later when I tighten the volume nut up. So, what do you think? Do you think that looks about right? Equidistant from both sides? It's not quite right, but as I said, I am going to take them off again. So, but I think that's beginning to look a bit smart, don't you? You'll have to tell me, by the way, whether you think that in my videos I go into too much detail or not enough, because I appreciate that some of you out there are watching by accident. You just found my channel and think, well, what's he on about? Some of you will be much more technical and thinking, do we really want to see him putting on a volume control knob? So I need to know really what you, my very few viewers, would like to see. Now this is the other things that have arrived. These are the speaker output sockets. Now I like these in particular because I like to use a 4mm plug to just pop into here. But you can of course open it and put your wire through the hole in there, or indeed put a spade terminal on. But if you're like me and different speakers are connected, I'm always connecting different amplifiers, so I tend to favour these. They're gold plated, or just painted yellow, I'm not sure. No, they really are gold plated. Not cheap, but a pretty good socket. But here is the back panel, and the question is, will they fit the holes? No, not those holes, those holes. That's going to be for the input phonos. So we'll just have a quick look. I seem to recall when I did this before, I had to do some filing. So let's have a look. It's obviously the hole's got to be big enough to clear the collar on there, because obviously that's the positive of the speaker and you don't want it shorting onto the chassis. So we'll have a look at this one. Oh, look at that. I don't believe this. I think it's because you good folks are watching me, because 9 times they are the wrong holes. That's the right holes. And they do fit. I was excited then for a minute, and then bitterly disappointed when I thought they weren't going to fit. But those holes are actually the same size as that. Looks like an optical illusion, doesn't it? I'm sure these look bigger, but as you can see, they plainly aren't. So, brilliant. All 4 are mounted successfully. Excuse the funny angle, it's so that I don't get glare on it like that. Just a quick tip. You'll see that the top here is cut away. If I can show it, yes, can you see it there? Make sure they are all pointing up. Then the hole that appears in the front here will be at the top or the bottom. Well, obviously it'll go straight through, and easy for connections. If they're all over the place, it makes it hard to connect later. And also, another little tip, these are quite a high mass of metal. It's probably better, if you've only got a small soldering iron, to connect a wire to these, just a long fly lead, before you put it in here, because the moment you add the nut, it's sort of adding all that extra mass, which for a smallish soldering iron is really, really hard labour, and you will curse at doing that. So if your soldering iron is small, you can solder these. Takes a while, but get your soldering iron nice and hot and flow the solder in there well, and you won't have a problem. But if you've got one of these Mammoth soldering irons you can weld buses with, you can do it like this. This is the mains input socket. Now, this is equipped with a fuse, and this comes with the complete chassis kit. But don't forget to pop the fuse in, because I know this sounds ridiculous, but once you've assembled that, this is now out of sight, out of mind, and you'll come and connect it all up, and you'll be going around and you'll throw the switch and absolutely nothing will happen, because you forgot to pop the fuse in there. And for this particular project, for use on 240 volts, 220, 240 volts, I would suggest a 5 amp quick blow. You could use, say, a 3 amp slow blow, but if something goes wrong, you want it to happen pretty quick, don't you? It's only when I've finally come to test it, I always try and use the lowest value fuse I can, but sometimes when, what I normally say is, if you're thrashing it, both channels driven into a 4 ohm load and the fuse doesn't blow, and you flick the power on and off 4 or 5 times, again, you can try and calculate these things, but it's very hard to calculate peak inrush currents, because it depends on so many things. So start at a nominal value, and if you pop the odd fuse, so what? Well, that was just a quick update video, just to show you that things are going on and I haven't forgotten, and all the stuff from China is beginning to come in now. 3 parcels today. So one of the parcels was from another project for the future. Needless to say, it's about amplifiers, but this is what you get on this channel. Thanks for watching. bloody shitty Microsoft ruin yet another recording due to their bloody updates. Oops, sorry about that. Forgot the microphone was on.